All right, let's get into it. You know, we all have these weird little things our brain does, right? These quirks that feel kind of like a glitch in the system. But what if they aren't glitches at all? What if they're actually features, part of a hidden logic that we just don't quite get? Well, today, we're going to decode some of the strangest things your brain does.
Oh, you know this feeling. That moment of panic. You're talking to someone you have definitely met before, maybe even a few times. And their name, it's not on the tip of your tongue. It has just evaporated. Poof, it's gone.
Or how about this one? You're just minding your own business in the shower and boom, suddenly you're delivering the most brilliant, crushing comeback to an argument that hasn't even happened. You are just absolutely winning a debate against someone who probably has no idea you're even mad at them.
And of course, the big one. The 3 a.m. greatest hits of every embarrassing thing you've ever said. For some reason, your brain decides that now is the perfect time to do a deep dive analysis of that awkward comment you made at a party over a decade ago.
So what is going on? Why does our brain sometimes feel like it's working against us? Well, it turns out these aren't just random little quirks. They are actually clues. Clues to the hidden operating system that's running your entire life. And we are going to figure it out.
So, let's start with case number 1, the mystery of the vanishing name. Now, it feels like a memory failure, right? But it's actually about your brain's really strict filtering system.
Okay, picture this. The second you meet someone new, your brain just goes into overdrive. It's processing their face, their tone of voice, their body language. It's trying to figure out the social dynamics, all while you're worrying about what you're going to say next. And in the middle of all that chaos, someone just throws a random, meaningless sound at you. Their name. It's just a piece of data with nothing to stick to.
You know, psychologists have this perfect little illustration for this. It's called the Baker/Baker paradox. Back in the 80s, a study found that people were way more likely to remember that a man's job is a baker than to remember that his last name is Baker. It's the exact same word, but the brain treats it completely differently. So why is that? Well, it's pretty simple. The job, baker, instantly connects to this whole web of ideas in your head. You think of flour and bread, the smell of an oven, maybe getting up early. It has meaning. But the name baker, it's just an empty sound. It's a file with no folder to put it in. So your brain, being ruthlessly efficient, just tosses it out.
So here's the first big reframe. Forgetting a name isn't a sign that you have a bad memory or that you're a bad person. It's actually a sign that your brain has a very strict policy. It prioritizes meaning over random data every single time. It's a feature, not a bug.
Okay, so now let's take that same exact principle, the brain's obsession with meaning, and turn it inward. This gets us to the world of the shower argument and those imaginary conversations we all have. See, there's a part of your brain neuroscientists call the default mode network, and it's basically your brain's internal story generator. The moment you stop focusing on a task, driving, washing dishes, standing in the shower, this thing kicks on, and it just starts churning out memories, future fantasies, and rehearsals for things that might happen. So why do we get so lost in these worlds? Well, because these imaginary scenarios give us things the real world often can't. In a daydream, you're in total control. You can finally get that emotional resolution you never got in real life. You can have that conversation where the other person finally gets it. It's a safe place to meet some very real needs.
But here's where the problem can start. It can become this cycle. You escape into a daydream to meet a need. But when you snap out of it, you realize time has passed, and you get this weird emotional aftertaste, this feeling of shame. And that shame just makes you want to escape all over again. It becomes this vicious feedback loop.
But, and this is our second huge reframe, this is not a character flaw. For so many people, this was an incredibly creative coping mechanism. It was your nervous system's way of finding an exit door when the real world wasn't offering one. It's not a sign of a broken mind, it's a sign of a really rich inner world.
All right, for our last piece of the puzzle, let's look at what happens when the brain's processing power goes into total overdrive. This is the paradox of the so-called high IQ mind. You know, we have this cultural myth of the genius, right? They're supposed to be calm, organized, super confident. But the reality for many highly intelligent people is the complete opposite. They're often plagued by constant self-doubt, they can be incredibly anxious, and they forget mundane things like where they put their keys all the time.
And here's why. A more powerful brain isn't necessarily a calmer brain. Think of it more like a faster, more powerful computer. It's a supercharged threat detector that is constantly running simulations of every single thing that could possibly go wrong.
So here's our final reframe. Having that kind of high-processing brain isn't always the superpower we think it is. A lot of the time, it's just the quiet daily experience of being completely exhausted by your own mind, a mind that just will not shut up.
So, where does all this leave us? We've looked at 3 totally different, kind of weird things our brains do. But the thing is, they're not unrelated at all. They're all symptoms of the exact same core design.
Just look at this. Forgetting names? That's your brain prioritizing meaning over data. Imagining scenarios? That's your brain literally creating meaning to feel safe. And that high-level anxiety? That's your brain over-processing meaning and potential threats. It's 3 different outputs, all coming from one central system that is absolutely obsessed with what things mean.
So the big takeaway here is really simple. None of these things are a flaw in your mind. They're just the natural result of a very particular architecture, an architecture that is hardwired to find, create, and analyze meaning above absolutely everything else.
So that leaves us with one last question. What could you do? What could you achieve if you started working with that logic instead of fighting against it? So instead of getting mad when you forget a name, what if you just gave your brain a meaningful hook to hang it on? Instead of feeling shame about a daydream, what if you saw it as a clue to a need that isn't being met? See, understanding the architecture, that's the first step. The next one is learning how to be a better architect.